Thanks. Welcome to this virtual town hall. This is our first ever for Citizens Alliance of Idaho, and I'm super happy to be able to bring this to you all. My name is Matt Edwards. I'm with Citizens Alliance of Idaho, and shortly I will be joined by Representative Julie Yamamoto, currently out of Legislative District 10. But before I introduce the representative, I just want to quickly cover a few items. For those who don't know, Citizens Alliance of Idaho is a 501c4 organization that's centered around what we call the Pledge. And the Pledge is a legislator pledge made up of 10 statements that were inspired by the Idaho and the U.S. constitutions. The idea being that if we can get commitments from all of our Idaho lawmakers to uphold and support the values expressed in the Pledge, that we can preserve the shared values that make Idaho such a great place to live, raise a family, and preserve liberty for all. So I want to share real quickly let's see if this works, a digitally signed version of the Pledge. And I apologize if it's, let's see, it's loading here. You're probably going to see my screen and this screen, but here's a digitally signed version of the Pledge. And by the end of the 2022 legislative session, we had over 25% of the legislature sign the Pledge, which for a first-year project exceeded our expectations, but also wasn't too surprising because Idaho leads in many of these areas in our country. So let me get out of this here. Okay. So that's really exciting. If you want to read the Pledge in full and have it up, you can go to citizensallianceidaho.org/thepledge and see the full version of it there. The reason for this evening's event stems from a part of the Pledge down at the bottom right before the signature that every signer expects and welcomes their constituents to hold them accountable when it comes to their legislative votes and actions in accordance with the Pledge. And this is the critical part of the Pledge, and is a big reason why we consider signing this to be an act of political courage. And I thank Representative Yamamoto for signing and for agreeing to participate in this event so we can hear directly from her on the reason why she ended up in bad standing with the Pledge. Check. Can you guys hear me again? I must have hit something. Okay, good. All right. Thanks, guys. All right. First time with this platform, so we're moving right along. Okay, anyway, like I said, it's being recorded. If you wish to ask questions, there's an Ask a Question button at the bottom. Make sure you type your question into there, and we'll get to it. I just asked that all the questions stay on topic tonight. That we want it to relate to the representative's record in support of our Pledge. And I know that discussing political matters can often become a heated arena, but we're committed to remaining civil and respectful and listening to each other's positions in order to give you a better understanding. So I just want to stress that point. Thank you so much for everybody for being here as we catch through the glitches. I promise not to hit any more buttons, but I will like to hit one last button here, and that is to invite Representative Yamamoto onto screen. And I'm going to do that now. Here we go. So bear with us. And if you didn't hear me,
I'll move.
Okay.
Now I'll move into the screen. All right. And I didn't hear, I think we all lost it about the time you started saying how the scoring went. So I think that's what everybody missed.
Okay, well then let me refresh real quick about the scoring. So out of all the legislators that signed, we had 26 legislators sign, and 69% of those ended up in the good standing, which was that green on the pie graph. 19% were in the red chart pie graph, which is the bad standing, and then 12% were in the middle, which was the questionable standing. And so that was what that pie graph was. So thank you, Representative, for letting me re-explain that. But
Sure.
once again, welcome, and I'd like to let you say hello and say a few words.
Well, that's all I'm going to do is just say hello and just say thank you for giving me an opportunity, because I do want to jump right in because we only have an hour. And so I want to make sure that I cover all the votes and then give people a chance to ask questions. But I will also say that on my Facebook page, my email has both my house email and my personal email, and I answer both. I look at them every day. There isn't a day that goes by that I don't look. And my phone number is my personal cell. And so if somebody texts me, calls me, whatever, I might not answer if I think it's car insurance warranty or something like that, but I always call back. So that's something that I would say. So if we're ready to start, I'm just going to jump in.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely. So, just so everybody knows how we're gonna tackle this, for each bill that we'll discuss, I'll reference it by the bill number, but also give you our position on why we either supported or didn't support the bill, and then I'll ask the representative here if she agrees with our assessment, and because you may not, and then if you and then tell us why you voted the way you did. And then I'd like to take a question from the audience once we get through that, if there is one on that particular bill, and then I'll just wrap it up before moving to the next one. So
I kind of gathered them up into topics. Did you not, when we talked before, we kind of talked about maybe grouping them so that we're staying with the same topic.
Yeah. And so what I'd like to do, I know most of the votes that were against the pledge had to deal with the pledge statement that says, "I will not vote for any budget or spending bill that expands government." So a lot of it was a spending. We were spending votes that didn't go through, that didn't go the right way. But the first one that wasn't applicable necessarily to that was that we could bring up perhaps is House Bill 658, which is a heavy one. That is the one. House Bill 658 dealt with creating confidentiality for folks in the pharmaceutical industry or drug manufacturing industries to be exempt from being called to be a witness or be prosecuted if should a issue happen during a death penalty, when they administered the death penalty using those drugs. Do you have that bill there?
I do, but I'm trying to find where, like I said, I kind of gathered them into big topics like medical, taxes, First Amendment or Second Amendment rights, that sort of thing. So let me find.
Okay. Well, I'll let you look for that, and I'll just explain it. I'll explain the position that Citizens Alliance of Idaho took on that bill. We looked at this bill and looked at it that it wasn't in. It violated the statement. I will vote to support due process, and so we looked at this bill as violating an individual's due process by restricting access to evidence that may be needed in court in order to hold someone liable in case a case was brought forward, and during the creation, distribution, or administration of drugs used in the death penalty. So that was our position. Was that we looked at it as making people exempt from their due process if should something happen where something goes into a court of law.
I can't find it, but I know why I voted how I voted, so I'll just speak to it. And the reason that I voted against it is because how it was presented to us. I support the penalty, and if we didn't vote for this to grant that immunity, then the chances of there ever being an actual death taken, actually being completed was going to be almost impossible. And I didn't want to take it off the table because I think maybe it doesn't stop everybody from doing things, but it would sure keep me from doing it. And I think it does keep some people from making a decision that warrants a death penalty. And if it means that that nobody wants to be the one who administers the drug or who does any of the pieces of it, then I think it denies the people the ability to carry forth a just punishment.
Do you look at it as disagreeing with how our position on the due process side of it, that should something go wrong along the lines from the creation of the drugs all the way to the administration of it, if there's something that happens that is worth a court case, that the people who may be further up the chain in the creation of these drugs would not be liable? Was that ever a concern, or did that ever come up, do you think, in thinking about this, that the way that this extends all the way up to the creators of the drug or the inventors or the distributors of it versus the actual administrator, in the room perhaps?
Well, I understand where you're going with that, but I guess I still feel like that if it basically has the effect of making it so that we never use the death penalty anymore, it wasn't worth it to me to not grant them. And if that person put themselves in that position, and the fact that by the time it gets to the death penalty, am I going to say never have we ever executed someone who didn't deserve to be? Probably I can't say never, but by the time they get there, they've had so many appeals and other opportunities for redress that I guess to me, I just look at it more as we want to make sure that we can still offer that as a way to give somebody pause for some of the things that they do. So I'm not gonna,
sure.
I don't argue your point. I just felt like that what I'm talking about outweighs that particular situation. Now, if we were talking about the COVID vaccine, then I would probably lean more your way.
Yeah, I think that, and again, this wasn't us taking a position necessarily on the death penalty as an action. It was more about holding pharmaceutical companies allowing them to not be held liable in the event something where they could be liable for something that goes wrong in that. And so that was the main concern that we had, is that people would lose the ability to have that process.
But I didn't see that as being the issue in that particular piece of legislation.
Okay.
So I know Cheney, Representative Cheney, was the one who put that forward, and in direct response to that, he said that it wasn't going to make it so that somebody couldn't still say there's a civil problem, but it was more a matter of being able to say who is doing what and putting that information out to the public. And it was going to have the effect of that nobody's going to want to put their name on the line and have it go out that they're the ones pulling the trigger, or in this case, shooting in the drug or whatever it is. So you're looking at it from a due process situation, and I'm looking at it from an on the ground, pragmatic, when we want it to happen, making sure it can happen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks for that. One of the things that always piques my curiosity about bills like this that seem so nuanced, and they're written specifically to protect, in this case, pharmaceutical companies on down the line. And I wonder, well, whose idea was this bill? It certainly wasn't me or the normal citizens of Idaho. It sounds to me like, there were some folks at some of these companies or in this industry that felt they needed this sort of protection for whatever reason. And so that always kind of just makes us question why some of these bills get the attention they do.
Yeah, and I actually think it came from the Idaho penal system, saying that it was going to have the effect of essentially just saying the death penalty's off the table. So I guess we could delve into that further to see where did it actually come from. But and like I said, if we were talking about the COVID vaccine, then we would be on the same page.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's not on our topic tonight, because all the bills that went through for that we're right on line there. Okay, so
well, and I wish, can we talk about that just a little bit? Everything that had to do with the medical that was about vaccines and that sort of thing. Um, I had in that whole round, 8 of those of my votes were positive and only 3 were negative. So it was a situation where, like the Corona Pause Act, the employer can't ask for genetic information. They can't, prohibiting the mask mandates, prohibiting COVID vaccinations, the religious exemptions, allowing for telehealth. On all of those, I was on the same page with Citizen Alliance. So eight of those were positive. One that you didn't do that I wish you would have was looking at the crisis standard of care, that the hospitals don't get to decide that when they go into crisis standard of care, they get to decide if you're too old and we don't feel like dealing with you, we're just going to let you die. And so we passed legislation to say, no, you don't get to do that. There's somebody going to be in place that doesn't allow for that. So I guess I just want to have the people that are listening understand that we didn't disagree on 8 out of those areas. 3 of those
I'm sure. Yeah. But let's get back and focus on here, because I think the big problem that we're having with folks who ended up in the position that you did was the exorbitant amount of spending that happens in a state that's collecting, huge surpluses of money from taxes, property taxes, and so forth. And when that money gets spent in certain areas, so I'd like to move on to those bills. So the next bill that I want to bring up, which was a House Bill 648, which dealt with and I'll type it in the chat so people can follow along here. This was a bill that was presented to lower the base budget in counties where they look at their base budget to determine what the property taxes should be for the residents and property owners. And this bill would have said that a portion of sales tax revenue that is going to these counties, some of it has to be applied to that base budget in order to lower the property taxes of the property owners in that county. And you voted against the bill, and we saw that as being something that wasn't in line with helping, reduce taxes or fees, and in effect help, especially this year, helped raise taxes on property owners. So that was the position we took on that bill. So
I'm not going to let that one slide. I'm not going to let that one slide. We didn't raise taxes, and no, that did not happen. And so, yes, I voted no on that one about they must deduct certain sales and use tax, because when we heard from the Canyon County clerk and from Nampa and Caldwell, Greenleaf, all the different cities, they said that this was between this and 389. They were already having issues with making sure that they were be able to give the services to the people that, whether we like it or not, people have decided that there are services that they expect. And so they're paid for by taxes. And I guess there comes a place where you have to decide, well, do you want those services or do you not? And are you do we hamstring those counties and those cities, or do people who are closest to those counties and cities who vote for the mayor, who vote for the Canyon County commissioners, who vote for whomever their city councils are, that they hold them accountable for the budgeting, and to say, Canyon County, as a result, this did not go through, but they all have already, the clerk has already said, he's asking for take zero taxes and use some of the reserve that they have accumulated to give people a year break. And I don't know what the 3 commissioners are going to do, but that is even without us passing 648. But it was give them the option, give them the closest to the people to make that decision. And in that area, we were positive on 11 different ones with the Citizens Alliance, and only 2 were negative, and this is one of those 2. So 11 positive votes that were aligned with you, and only 2 that didn't. And the reason why is because we either say that we believe in local control and that people need to be clear about who they're voting for their mayor, city councils, and Canyon County commissioners, or that the state is always going to be deciding what happens at the county level and the city level. And I hear from more people who say that they don't think that's our business.
Well, I take the position that it's neither. If it's not the legislator's business, and it's certainly also not the county's business. I mean, I look at the, if when counties say, oh no, we're against this bill, we don't want this because we don't we're struggling as it is, or whatever the excuses that they would say against this bill. Again, I'm looking at it from a perspective of the property owners, where they say the government keeps collecting these taxes, and here comes a bill that is going to say, hey, local governments, local county governments, you need to help provide relief. And when we're having this surplus of tax revenue, this is above and beyond what has been coming in, and with inflation and everything the way it is, the surplus in the state has been enormous the last several years. And so
let me speak
this
to
is
that.
this is going to say to the counties, you need to pass this money back to the residents, back to the property owners. And so, of course, there may be some counties that may be against this, and there may be some counties that are already doing this because they have elected strong leadership and strong folks into the county that realize that their role is to help protect the property owners and to help protect people, and to maximize and to be able to provide the services that's required of government, or that is asked of by the people in that county, and no more and no less. And so I'm looking at this thinking that it's one local government asking the larger state government to help protect them so that they can keep control.
Well, we disagree on that, but I will say, we also, as you know, that sales tax, that surplus, none of that, all of that, it has to be, any surplus has to go back in the form of property, or in the form of tax relief, which is where that $600 million for income tax came from, and where there will be other, I mean, we're in the big surplus again, as you pointed out. That money can't be given to cities and counties to be used. However, that money will go back in some form of tax relief to the citizens of Idaho. But are we taking from the cities and the counties what is their due, which is what the Idaho Constitution says that we're going to do, and then say that we're not going to give it to them? That doesn't make sense to me. But like I said, I'm not going, I understand where you're going with it, but where there are 11 positive votes for in the tax area of the votes that align with
income
taxes, property tax reduction. I guess.
Yeah, I'm grateful for those votes. I'm glad that they were in the right spot, and our intent with the pledge and the folks who are in the red or in the yellow is to say, well, you signed the pledge, right? So I know you agree in principle to in the spirit of the pledge, and so it's this forum here is designed for us to try and just like figure out like which of these, like why 2 out of 11 or why this out of that is the reason why you went this way versus that way. And so
right. Well, and I'm explaining that. So people will
that,
either accept it or they won't. So you're right. I'm good with that one. We can move on.
Okay.
I would like to get through them, and I can see our time is rapidly. So I will move on.
Okay, fair enough. All right. So then to the issue of spending, the rest of the other bills that we had on here were all dealt with spending bills. And as an example here, and I'll put this one in the chat so people, if they want to look it up, they can, was and
so when you say all the other bills, you're saying that all the other bills that were negative, right? That we don't agree on, because
the ones that you voted that you voted against our position that put you in the bad standing, because really, I mean, we could have a nice good discussion about all the great things and all the good bills that were passed, or all the good bills or the bad bills that were stopped with your help here and stuff. But but I'm really interested in trying to let the people understand why it was we scored the way we did with you, and allow you to respond and kind of have this dialogue here, so that way we can understand, because I want to learn from this too. I mean, we had a good conversation mid-year with you and several other legislators about a few bills that we were still trying to figure out what the nuances were and how they were aligned, and you contributed in that, and I thank you greatly for doing that. You've always been very responsive to us, and so
Pride.
yeah, and so I think that this was a way to continue that. So
Okay.
there was a bill, House Bill 499, which is one of these Percy bills.
Yep.
And I'll just explain it to. Yeah, this one was for the dispatchers, and so this here allowed a group of emergency employees to move into an earlier allowed to retire category, and we looked at that as well. That's going to spend more money, because people retiring early have longer payouts, and that will just spend more money that has been devoted to that particular fund. And just to digress slightly, we could argue whether or not government should be in the position of doing a lot of things and paying for a lot of things, but we're in this position now, so we have to worry. This is the reality of the situation, right?
Right.
So so with that, when we look at moving a group of people into an earlier allowed to retire category, which costs more money, we just look at that. Well, that's spending more money. So
let's talk about that. That's a good one. That's a good
Yeah.
one, because first of all, there's a pretty high burnout rate for those people, and so most of them aren't making it to retirement. And the other part of that is it was roughly 5% of the total payroll or for the dispatchers. And the other part of that is that there will be a larger employee contribution and a larger employer contribution. So yes, maybe they're going to pay out longer, but they're also, both the employer and the employee are putting more in to their Percy to cover that. So it ends up, I'm not going to tell you it's a complete wash, but it isn't going to explode that Percy fund.
And for the other bill is similarly, which is 589, right? I'll put that in the chat too, so people can know which one we're discussing. That one also increased the number of law enforcement employees eligible for the state retirement plan, and I believe that was about moving like the juvenile detention folks into the retirement plan. So again, it's more benefits, it's more spending for folks that wasn't there prior. So that's why we scored it the way we did there.
Right. And so you weren't part of the discussion when it came through JFAC, and when it came to us. The employee contribution is going to increase by about $160 a month for them out of their paycheck. So they are paying into that fund because they're going to be, as you point out, drawing on it sooner. So both the employer and the employee, both put in, so that it helps. It might not be exact and total, but it's not. They're going to contribute their part, both parties, to make that work, just like the school people do, just like police officers do now. So that fund is about the most solvent fund there is, because they do a really good job of taking that money and in putting it into the stock market, into things that are, although we ask them to divest of anything that had to do with Russia, but it's the most solvent fund we have. And part of that is because there's continual pay in. So I have to say, I disagree with you on that one, as far as that being a big expansion of paying and of government.
Yeah, it's funny because as I go through these, there is a lot of bills, or there's a number of bills. I won't say a lot, but there's a number of bills that feel like, one could say, oh, how petty, like for instance, that there's, spending $10,000 to create a new database for the which one, the confined animal feeding operations.
Right.
I'll type that in the chat. We can do that one next. That's House Bill.
Yeah, let's do that one next.
559. And so this created a new fund to make available uh, um,
For those
yeah.
same kinds of
Okay.
funds, because for the animal feeds that go direct into water, they already have
Right.
this. And
Right.
their whole
Right.
point is so that DEQ and EPA doesn't come in and close them down or do whatever they, put all these things on top of them. And they never did
Right.
the same fund for the confined animals. And so that's what they were asking us to do, is that they want us to circumvent DEQ and EPA being able to, I mean, if we're getting to the place that flatulent cows are a problem, then you can see why they're concerned with, if they don't have the same things at their disposal to show what they're doing to address these issues that's going into the air, maybe not directly into a water system, but now they're starting to talk about, yeah, but it's seeping down and it's going to get into the groundwater, and then it does affect our drinking water, and it is an issue. And if they start closing down all those confined animal feeding, I'm a carnivore. I want to eat meat. And so my feeling was, you know what? If that's what it takes for us to do that, that to me is fighting back against some of those federal mandates that say, we're going to come in and say, you can't have this many cows here, you can't have these sheep grazing here because they're this close to water, or it's coming, prove to
Yeah.
us it's not seeping down into the groundwater and then causing all this climate dysfunction. And and there you are. So normally I would agree with you, expanding government bad, but when you balance it with DEQ, EPA, and eating, then I say I'm going to give it to them. And then I would also say that so far this year, all the departments and agencies turned back over $15 million. So because they weren't using it. So that money then can be used to take care of that. And, is it the most wonderful thing? No, but I still think it makes sense to give them the opportunity to be able to keep us in food.
Yeah, I'm wondering, like, shouldn't industry be responsible for this type of activity and these types of worries? Because, having the government step in to create fund and using taxpayer dollars and using, all of the tools that government has, where it seems like the only answer to all these problems is to just spend, rather than just spend money. Can we figure out ways to either, write law and enforce it so that the EPA or whatever federal overreach is coming into the state, that we just don't allow that to happen, and enforce it somehow, and have agriculture or whichever industry find the solution themselves? Because a lot of the times, and like I said, I don't want to make this sound petty, but you just chip away at all these little bills, and it's a few thousand here, 100,000 here, a few million here, and next thing we're not fiscally responsible, and it's definitely not something that a lot of people can get on board with.
Well, that's why
however, like I said, I know that you have and we've built the pledge this way in a way that allows legislators to have votes like this one, where you can say, you know what, this one I feel is really important, so I'm gonna vote for it. But the problem is that when you apply that to a lot of them, then it adds up, and then we're in the position that we're in. So that's why I want to emphasize that. Yeah, go ahead.
I'll say three things. So the first thing I'll say is that there's only one of your bills that I would have done differently, and I bet we talk about it. The rest of them, I would have still been in the red, because as I understood what we were trying to do, even if it was to pay wildland firefighters more money so that we had them to fight, I would have voted for it. So I think I would have ended up, and I told you that about halfway through, I'm going to end up in the red, because these are things that I feel like need to happen. But you're right. People get a chance to say, well, I don't like it, so I'm going to get somebody else in her place and hope he or she does better. I mean, I've been told that by some people, and then I've been told by other people, you're doing what I want. But I'm going to say about the farmers and ag, they are sometimes living on such a small margin, and it's not all of them. I know you see some that are huge and they have these big cattle operations, and yeah, they probably could do that. But some of those small mom and pop ranchers, no, I don't think so. Their margin, who's making the money isn't the person who's out there with the cows every day And Farm Bureau was a strong proponent of this. I listened to them because they're my boots on the ground, literal boots on the ground on this deal. And the other thing that I would say about that is that you said, or something like that, you know, as far as can we pass laws to keep the feds at bay or and somehow enforce that, I think is how you said it. There's the issue. How do we somehow enforce that? And so we, you know, all of these bills, and we had two members on JFAC in the House that I would contend are probably the strongest. I mean, they vote no on every appropriation bill, but not even they brought forth one piece of legislation to diminish, make smaller, not fund a department or an agency or a part of a department or agency. So all I can tell you after 2 years is it must not be as easy as just saying, can't we just say no? You know.
Well, and yeah, fair enough. And I you know, I'll admit I don't have the solutions in my mind right now. But one of the things that I know that when I spoke to legislators about signing the bill was that if we could see the more out, you know, thinking outside the box or using rules and things that are already in place and taking a stand for it and not just, you know, saying, okay, well, we'll just send money through this time or we'll create this fund this time. I mean, a lot of these spending bills, they never have any sunsets on them. And so, you know, has there ever been a time where a bill came up that said, you know what, it's time to close down this grant or this fund, or has any of those come across that you've said, you know what? Oh, great. Yeah. So more of those, of those would be great because, you know, you mentioned the wildfire pay. So I want to give you a chance to talk about that one. Again, you know, I mean, you know, it's wildfire season now, so we know that the wildfire firefighters are out there fighting fires, and
that whole,
and I think that there is
the annual cost of that increase was going to be somewhere between $330,000 and $390,000. So when you talk
so let me let everybody know.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, let me just tell them what it was there. Yeah, so this would spend, as Representative said, just about around $300,000 in order to provide hazard pay increases for firefighters fighting these fires. And so we looked at that obviously as an expansion. We're spending more money paying firefighters, and you know, again, nothing against the firefighters, and they deserve. You know, they deserve proper pay for doing such a dangerous job. But wouldn't one of the solutions be, well, let's look at the pay scale for firefighters and see what the job requirements and what job duties are, and kind of use it that way within the departments of where it's needed versus.
That's what it will do. That's exactly what it will do.
Okay, so yeah, please explain. Go ahead.
Yeah, so it's exactly, and that's why there's a range, is because it's differentiated depending on where they're deployed and for how long and how dangerous is it. So it's exactly what you said. It's not for everybody to get this pay raise. It's specific folks to say, this is a particularly dangerous place. We're sending you there. And then we're going to make a differential in your pay because it's not the same as coming over here to a BLM fire that's just, you know, flat, and you can maybe do a road and stop it. So it is a differential pay, not just to everybody.
And to clarify, you meant Bureau of Land Management fire.
Oh yeah, not Black Lives Matter. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Good
That's
point.
Okay.
Who would have ever thought? I mean, when it first came up, that's exactly what I was thinking. What does the Bureau of Land Management have to do with any of this? But okay.
Right. Yeah.
You're fast.
Exactly.
You're quick.
Yeah.
Okay.
We got it. We're on board here. Okay.
Well, we're in that one. What if we look at 1248 about allowing the water and sewer districts to raise compensation of board members from $100 to $150 if they choose? Because that was one of the negative votes that would have helped me be closer to yellow than red. I'm just saying.
Yeah, well, this is one of those things that we know, and we're looking at this, you know, should we look at this stuff? But again, this was saying, we're spending more money. We're giving more compensation. This was billed, like you said, Senate Bill 1248, the water sewer board compensation, and it was raising water board compensation because these folks don't get paid a salary
to do it. Yeah, it's
to
so
do
they can
it, but
travel. Yeah.
and so
this was a 65-2 and 3 absent vote in the House. 65 people voted for it, 2 voted against it, and 3 weren't there that day. And in the House or in the Senate, it was a 34-0, and 1 person was absent that day. So it was just a matter of saying, you know what, it's hard to get people to serve on these boards, especially if they have to travel, especially if they have to stay overnight, because some of them are from far-flung places, and for them to find a common meeting place, it's not just, jump on your horse and get there in a couple hours. It's jump in your car and drive for hours to get to wherever it is. Probably have to stay overnight, probably have to eat. And the other part of that, it says, if they choose. So if there are people who just say, you know what, I don't need $150, then they just don't do it. But it was with water the way it is. And, we were blessed that we got way more water than what it looked like we were going to get. But as water becomes a bigger issue, people serving on these water and sewer district boards are going to become more and more important, just like people are finding out that precinct committee chair positions are more and more important. So to me, it was worth it to, give it to them to say, you know what, if it helps you get good people on who are willing to serve and that they're not paying so much out of their pocket, yay. If they say they're not going to take the extra money, fine. And some of them don't take any of it.
Sure. Okay. I'm going to throw another one up here. House Bill 629, and I'll put that in the chat for folks. This one created a new office that needs funding, and so again, this is just another bill that see if I can bring up the actual text here.
I can tell you, it's about allowing for an independent office for those administrative hearings so that there's independence and impartiality to contested cases in health and welfare. And the way it is now is most people feel like health and welfare is kind of a fixed system and they have a vested interest in protecting themselves. And so when there is a contested thing, it's sort of like the system's stacked against you and you don't have an opportunity really to change anybody's mind. And so what this would allow, yes, it's a huge initial cost, but here's the deal, and this is why we passed it, is that each of those agencies have budgeted for how much of that money would naturally go into their in-house thing. Now that money will be paid into this independent Office of Administrative Hearings. And so, yes, initially there's this cost, but over time, they're going to pay it all back in and then continue to pay. And it's not going to be a continual draw on the system, more money every year into the system. So to me, when you talk about due process and giving somebody a better voice, this is one of those that I'll argue this one with you, that it actually does give the average everyday person a better chance of having their contested case heard fairly and impartially instead of by a fixed and closed system that is more concerned with backing each other up. I have your back. Well, who has the everyday person's back?
Okay. Let me see if there's any questions on this one here. Someone just typed a question.
Oh, good.
That's okay. So I'm gonna. It doesn't necessarily related to our topic at the moment, so I'm gonna skip that right there.
Okay.
So when a question on that. So when the time comes to say, hey, let's create a fund that we can spend all this money that eventually will be recoverable, or in order to solve this problem, isn't isn't there a way to look at that and go to the root issue, the cause of why these people are in the position that they're in, or why government doesn't already have? I mean, if this whole new department or this whole new apparatus is being set up to solve this particular problem, again, why are we even involved in these processes to begin with?
Well,
Those are the types of questions that I'd like to look at.
absolutely. Well, once someone way back when decided that the proper role of government was all this health and welfare, and within health and welfare, there are like 25 different departments and agencies and sub-agencies and that sort of thing. It is a huge operation. And, but you didn't decide, I didn't decide that. That happened many moons ago. And so back to your point of, is it time to look through there and say, are there areas that need to go? But child protection services, well water, somebody having animals too close to someone's well, all of these things all fall under this huge umbrella of health and welfare, Southwest District Health. All of those things are kind of mingled and commingled, but separate too. And so I think what happens over time is things like this occur, that we start recognizing, there are enough citizens who come and say, the system is too bound. It's too much cover your back. And so these things are happening. And so here, to me, the reason it's a good solution is that money is already there to be spent on this, but now it's going to be somebody who's independent of them, not somebody who it's their job to watch somebody's back or to rule that we always did it right. So the money, should it be spent at all? Okay, that's a whole different question, Matt. And, I would welcome people coming on board who say, but in the 2 years I've been there, there has not been one person who has said, we need to look at making this department, getting rid of it, or making it smaller, or cutting this part out of this agency, or any of that. It's always been, we're just going to say no and hope that we send a strong message.
Well, there definitely needs to be some leadership on that for sure. I'll grant you that, but anytime when you look at it, like for instance, health and welfare, and you say, okay, we're going to create a new fund for this. Does anybody do even a cursory audit of what health and welfare is spending their money on?
Yeah.
And therefore saying, well, are you doing it wisely? And why, if we need to divert funding over here so we can stay at sort of a net zero, then why don't we look at that? We do have a question that came up here that said health and welfare spent $164,000 on gay pride events. Should their funding not be reduced or eliminated until there's accountability, rather than just giving more money? So, however you feel about, those particular events and such, here's a department that seems to be using money, for things that may not be in their jurisdiction.
So that's a really good question.
For what these departments were intended for.
Exactly.
We always see departments get created and then they go overboard. So rather than vote for more money, why don't we just say, hey, you know what? Let's take a stand and do something different.
So JFAC, the Joint Finance Committee, 10 in the House, 10 in the Senate, they all get together and they listen to all of these agencies. Believe me, I believe that there is going to be a discussion. So I'm going to cover my face, which is not going to hurt some people's feelings at all. But this is the sheet of all of the agencies and departments that JFAC has to go through before we set budgets. And they actually assign House and Senate members to each of those committees to meet with those folks. The Department of Financial Management also is looking through all of their expenditures. Is there anything that stands out, something that shouldn't be happening? So that's the governor's office does part of that. The department does part of that. We have our own people, the legislators, that they don't answer to the governor and they don't answer to the departments or agencies. They answer to us. And so all of them are looking at those things. And believe me, something like the expenditures that shouldn't be happening, that's going to come up, and people are going to say, it's just like when they ask for a helicopter and you say, well, who's going to maintain it? Where's it going to be? Who's going to get, who's the licensing body? What's the liability? And this is a big NO. Well, the same process is designed to say all of those, except for the Medicaid expansion, which I voted no for, and I bet a lot of other people did, but 60.8% of Idahoans who voted in the 2018 election voted to expand Medicaid to $4 billion this year. So you see the issue that we have going here is that for everything that we try to tamp down, there's some other thing that kind of seems like it blows up. And I guess I would not agree with the use of that money that you just, the questioner just put in. No, that should not be a health and welfare thing. That's something that JFAC should be talking to them about and saying, this is why we're going to reduce your budget, because if you don't have any better sense in how to spend your money that's dealing with health and welfare issues, we have a mental health crisis in this state. I'm
glad to hear you say
you and your questioner that.
Yeah, and I'm glad to hear you say that, because there, a lot of other folks have said, well, JFAC sets the rules, and then these, and there's also certain budgets that are approved there that we just have to do over here, which is why we're not necessarily talking about appropriations and stuff. Yeah. You don't necessarily have to, of course, yes, but generally speaking, that's if you said no to all of them, then everything comes to a halt. So you definitely have to pick your battles, and you're not yourself on JFAC, right?
No.
Yeah. I heard there's a lot of new openings coming up.
The one thing they told us, don't trust anybody, but find people you can trust. And I did find several people on JFAC who I feel like give it to me straight, and that I do listen to them. And they question those folks. They expect them to keep their budgets low, and then they look at things like 15.4 million reverted back from state agency just this year because they didn't need it.
Yeah, you mentioned something about helicopters, which reminded me of Senate Bill 1319, which I'll put into the chat here as well. And so this uses federal funding to purchase fleets of like zero emission school buses for districts who would then have to, like you said, then now they have to maintain these new buses and have this new fleet of buses with a whole new set of different stringent requirements and such for these buses and such. It uses federal funds, presumably, ARPA money, if you want to call it that. And so we took a negative position on that bill, which
I understand why
did passing.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue that one with you at all. I understand why you weren't in favor of that particular one. I do, because like rural schools, they're not going to do it, because how are they even going to, just the whole idea. And even Idaho Power said that we're going to be completely green by 2050. I don't see how.
Yeah.
It was a grand opportunity, so I won't argue that point with you. I think that one, I get why you gave that a negative.
Okay. Well, we only have a few minutes left, and I kind of want to wrap this up with you by asking you, what, based on even the discussion here, but for us moving forward is like, what I want to make sure our organization does is be able to, keep people informed as to what, how legislators are doing and they're voting in accordance with our pledge. But also when we get to the areas of here, because honestly, like you said, Representative, the rest of the pledge points, there was a free speech bill that you voted in favor of. There was plenty of other things that were fantastic. And so it really comes down to the spending.
100% on the election integrity. 100%.
And 100% on election integrity. That's right.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I did good.
Yeah. And someday we'll release a graph that shows how if everybody had signed the pledge, how well they did. And I don't want to embarrass a lot of people yet by doing that. But that being said, I know that spending is a big deal, and it's going to be a topic next year because we have another big surplus that you're all going to be dealing with, and some more, ideas for tax cuts, and what is always the favorite word of a spender, investment. And I don't know if investing is the proper term for some of the spending that goes on there. So I hope I'm
with you now. I thought you were going with the gold and silver, which I voted for that too. And
no.
Yeah,
No. Anytime government wants to spend, they call it an investment. Yeah.
We're investing in our children. Yes.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Here's what this is how I would end things if for my part of this. And that is, I have never shied away from a direct question. All of these bills, I spent hours going through each one of these that you gave me and putting them into how many of them were positive, how many were negative, why did I do what I did? And I knew what I did when I did it. And like I said, there's only one that I would have thought, you know what, if I had to do that one over again, and it was on that educational opportunity, because we gave that to parents believing they are in the best position to help their kids. And then when I started seeing the things they were paying for with it, iWatches, hoverboards, and I just think, okay, maybe that wasn't our proudest moment, right? And now we want to do educational savings accounts. Holy moly. If we can't do $150 or $1,000, what are you going to do with 6,000 or 7,000? Anyway, all this to say, my email, my phone number, I have never not returned a call, never not answered a direct question that's asked of me. People deserve that. They might not agree with me, but at least they're going to know why I did what I did. And then they'll either vote for me or they won't. But I, as far as spending is concerned, like you said, there's going to be a huge turnover in JFAC, and who knows, maybe there will be a very different way of looking at how do we fund things, and what kinds of, because I asked Matt Bunny, these are the questions I would ask, and he said those are precisely the kinds of questions we do ask. But you get down to, if it's not your thing, you don't think any money should be spent there. If it is your thing, you don't think there's enough money ever going to be spent there. So this is why you have 70 people in the House and 35 in the Senate, and we go in there and bash it out, and then people vote for you or they don't.
Yeah. Well, I thank you for that. Again, my goal is to get more people in there that don't want to spend any money and give it back to the people. So the more we can move towards that direction, the better. So I know you have to run. I thank you again. I'm sure we'll be in touch one more time before you get rolling back in that. You're unopposed in your election, right?
I am.
Okay. So you'll be back there in Boise.
I'll be back, I think. Well, I do. I have a Democrat challenger, and
you do.
Yeah,
okay, well, good luck in your race.
I'm with you now. In the primary, I was unopposed, but
right, that's right.
Hey, Matt, thank you for giving me a chance to be able to speak to these things. I appreciate it. Thank you for that.
And likewise too. Thank you. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. See ya.
Okay. Bye. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. I just want to go through. I know there were a couple of questions that I didn't get to ask down here. Okay, yeah, good. All right. Well, hey, thanks again. You can find our pledge at citizensallianceidaho.org. You can follow us on Facebook, on Instagram. If you're in Telegram, jump in there, subscribe to our newsletters and emails, and stay on top of everything. This recording should be available sometime in the future, but we hope you enjoy the rest of your week. That's it. Take care.